So you took classified information from Central Command that had a classification marking on it, because that's what's required by DoD regulations, and you put it on an unclassified system. So we're going to get a report in a few days from the DoD Inspector General. And if the DoD Inspector General finds what is...
Hello, pristine viewers. You're welcome back to another episode of The American Enigma. If you are new on this channel, be sure to like and smash that subscribe button to get more updates on uncensored analysis. Here we clear the confusion, defend the Constitution, and uncover the corruption in Washington, D.C., one video at a time. If you value America, demand accountability, and are fed up with elites hiding from the truth, sit back and watch closely. Today, I will be giving my analysis on a clip featuring Representative Seth Moulton grilling our so-called Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, or as I like to call him, the master of non-answers. What you're about to hear should concern every American, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, because what we're dealing with here is a total breakdown of responsibility in the top ranks of our military leadership.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, I'd like to clarify a few important details for the record. When you texted the launch time for F-18s going into combat over enemy territory facing anti-aircraft missiles on an unclassified signal chat, did that launch time come from Central Command, yes or no?
I know what you're referring to, and there were no
it's a very simple question. Did it come from? It's a very simple
or,
question. Did it come from Central Command?
Well, in this committee, no way in which I communicate or what I communicate on a successful strike is something that I would share.
So you can't even identify the combatant command under which this operation occurred?
Well, everybody knows the combatant.
Okay, so everyone knows it's Central Command. So when Central Command sent you this information, did they send it on a classified system or an unclassified system?
Well, as you know, having served yourself, any way that the Secretary of Defense communicates or provides information in and of itself is classified and not to be discussed.
So what was the classification marking of the launch time when it was sent to you? Because DoD regulations require information on classified systems to be marked.
What was the classification mark time?
Yeah. What was the classification marking?
Because again, classifications of any information in an ongoing operation that was successful are not things that would be disclosed in a public forum.
You can very well disclose whether or not it was classified. It's not classified to disclose whether or not it was classified. And in fact, DoD regulations state that any classified information has to be labeled with its classification. Was it classified secret or top secret?
What's not classified is that it was an incredibly successful mission against the Houthis.
Okay, so it was classified. So are you trying to say that the information was unclassified?
I'm not
okay,
trying to say
that's what
anything.
I thought. You're not saying that. So you took classified information from Central Command that had a classification marking on it, because that's what's required by DoD regulations, and you put it on an unclassified system. So we're going to get a report in a few days from the DoD Inspector General. And if the DoD Inspector General finds what is pretty obvious, both to you smiling there in the witness seat and to all of us up here, that the information was, in fact, classified, do you plan to take any accountability for that?
As I pointed out at the time...
you said that accountability is back. Does that not apply to you?
As I said at the time, Congressman, there were no names, targets, locations, units, routes, sources, methods, no classified information.
Okay, so if it comes back that it is classified, will you take accountability or not? You've already admitted that it was classified because everything you get from CENTCOM is classified. You just explained that to me. That's how you justified not answering the question.
Not what I said. I didn't confirm any classification or
okay, so if it is
what
confirmed,
I know is that
will you take
everything I
accountability?
share, everything I talk about,
Mr. Secretary, does accountability apply to you or not?
Is classified whether I talk or not.
Does it apply to you or not?
Does what apply to me?
Accountability. You said accountability is back at the Secretary.
And you know what? The Houthis were held accountable for shooting at our
I'm just asking if it applies to you.
Very successfully.
I'm not asking about the Houthis.
The previous administration let our ships get shot at, and nothing was done about it. And thankfully, because of the skill and courage of our troops on the battlefield,
asking about
we actually put them in a place where they called for a ceasefire.
I reclaim my time. I'm just asking if accountability applies to you. It's a very simple question. We use leadership by example.
Of course. Unlike, I serve at the pleasure of the president like everybody else does.
So it only applies to the president, not to you?
I serve at the pleasure.
You talked about the success of the Houthi operation. About how much money did it cost? How much money did you spend on missiles shooting at the Houthis?
Well, you'd have to compare that with what it costs.
I'm just asking how much did it cost?
Divert our shipping lanes around.
I'm told
the
it's
sea.
several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How many U.S.-flagged commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since your so-called successful operation?
Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration,
The answer is zero.
military vessels transit.
No, I didn't ask
just
about
this
military
week.
vessels. I
Well, which
asked
would
about
be the
commercial
precursor
vessels.
for
How many
civilian and
commercial vessels?
transit.
It's been several weeks. How many commercial vessels, U.S. flagged, have
Well,
transited the
would
Red
you, Mr. Congressman, put civilian ships
The
through
questions
dam
are not to
before
me,
military
Mr. Secretary,
ships?
they're to you.
We have responsibly put military
The answer
ships
is zero.
through first.
I reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number, but
You don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him?
they all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think
No, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just
of
asking
a
you
leader
why.
that we
And
need
you
at
probably
this
learned
time.
at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we
Why
want better
did you
representation
fire
in
him?
each and every of those.
You can't
each and
explain
every
why
one
you
of those
fired any of
places.
them?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Let me break this down for you. Congressman Moulton asks a very straightforward question. Did the launch time for an F-18 strike over enemy territory come from Central Command, and was it classified? Sounds simple, right? Well, apparently not if you're Secretary Austin. The man couldn't give a straight yes or no to save his job. Instead, we get this circus of dodging, deflection, and bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo. Folks, this isn't some internet troll we're talking about. This is the Secretary of Defense, the guy in charge of our armed forces, our national security, and by extension, the safety of you and me. And he's either unable or unwilling to answer the most basic question about whether he mishandled classified information. Let me say this clearly. If any of us in the private sector or in the military had shared classified information on an unclassified app like Signal, we'd be court-martialed, fired, or imprisoned. No questions asked. But here's the kicker. When Representative Moulton pressed him on whether accountability applies to him, Secretary Austin pulled the usual elitist stunt. He says he serves at the pleasure of the president. Translation: I'm untouchable. This right here is the Washington two-tiered system in action. One set of rules for you and me, another for them. If you're high enough up the chain, you get to skate free. And if someone calls you out, you just don't answer. Now let's talk dollars. Moulton estimates this so-called successful strike against the Houthis may have cost close to $1 billion. Yes, you heard that right, $1 billion to bomb desert targets in Yemen. Meanwhile, how many U.S.-flagged commercial ships are sailing the Red Sea since this operation? 0. Not one. Zip. That's your tax dollars hard at work, folks. We spent hundreds of millions, possibly $1 billion, to not make the Red Sea safer for American commerce. But hey, at least it made for a good press release, right? And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Moulton asks how many generals and admirals Secretary Austin has fired. The answer? 8. And not only does the secretary not know the number, he can't name a single reason why they were fired. Let me ask you, do you think you could fire 8 people at your job without explaining why? Try that and see how fast you get escorted out of the building. But apparently, in Biden's Pentagon, you don't need a reason. You just need to serve at the pleasure of the president. Let me translate that for you. You do what the administration wants or you're out. Competence? Honor? Track record? None of that matters. Just loyalty to the narrative. This is exactly why we're in trouble, folks. While China is launching hypersonic missiles, Russia is cozying up to Iran, and our southern border is a sieve, we've got a Secretary of Defense who can't answer basic questions about classified info, can't account for the money he spends, and can't explain why he's purging the leadership of our military. If you're wondering why morale in our armed forces is at historic lows, why recruitment is collapsing, and why veterans feel betrayed, this is it. This is the rot. So what do we do? Number 1. Demand accountability. Not just from the secretary, but from anyone in government who thinks they're above the law. Number 2. Support our troops, not the suits. The men and women in uniform put their lives on the line. They deserve leadership that respects the mission and the Constitution, not politics and PR. Number 3. Stay informed. When mainstream media won't cover this or buries it under 10 other headlines, you have to do the work. Share this video. Talk to your neighbors. Wake people up. I don't care if you're red or blue. This isn't about partisanships, it's about survival. Our enemies don't care about our politics. They care about weakness. And what we saw in that hearing was weakness disguised as arrogance. We need strength. We need truth. And we need leaders who remember they work for us, not the other way around. This has been Red, White, and Truth. I'm your host, standing for God, country, and common sense. If you value what you just heard, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with 3 people who still believe in America. Because if we don't fight for her, who will? See you on the next episode. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.